Warning, this review will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen this film, go watch it first. But if you decide to go on regardless and not heed this warning, it's your own fault, so do not blame me in any capacity. With 3 films put to the sword, it is time to look at what is, at this point of recording and release, the last Equestria Girls feature film. This one, however, got a little tired of being stuck in Cantlot High and decided a trip to the great outdoors would be something to take it away from the norm. And to say this was a long time coming may be the understatement of the century. I've criticised MLP episodes that showcase a lack of variety in locations in the past as being visually stale, with only a minute few ever managing to turn that lack of setting diversity into a positive, which explains why I was really quite peeved that Crystal Prep did not host the Friendship Games last time out. This time, however, we have a summer camp and all of its activities on offer to give us something that will hopefully be a welcome change and offer up something new to the fold, all while remembering what good Friendship Games managed to do and hopefully build upon it. However, if there's one thing that Legend of Everfree could do catastrophically wrong, it's that it could rely way too much on this new setting to the point where they could believe to mask over its issues by giving us a wowing visual location with no substance whatsoever, which would mean, while this film would be nice to look at, it would inevitably be an utter snooze fest and have no legitimate purpose. Now, I am hoping that the writers aren't going to think we're that stupid after some of the problems we've had in the prior films relating to somewhat similar issues with the story and writing qualities. Then again, knowing that they've learnt from their mistakes, and I would hope that they would do so, they stuck to the programme with this one, and I believe delivered something relatively good. Then again, it didn't manage to escape completely unscathed, as there were a few blemishes to be had along the way. Much like its predecessor, the choice to slowly but surely unveil the plot, character development and conflict slowly over its runtime was a surefire success, as it allowed you, much like the characters, to take in the picturesque scenery at your own pace in relaxed fashion, right before Twilight's battling with her inner demons, the exposure of magic to the main 7, the camp owner's sibling rivalry, a romantic subplot, and an overarching villain encompassed the story and caught up with you mighty fast. Now, while some of these elements came out of left field, they all managed to fuse together surprisingly well to where no particular part was jarring, as the relaxed pace kept its reign strong even at its most frantic, thanks to some nicely placed exposition dumps that bolstered and fleshed out the setting and new characters better than all of its prior counterparts did. Continuity to those films was mostly restricted to Midnight Sparkle haunting Sci-Twi, as this film's connections to its brethren was cast aside, making it feel like a fresh new start for the franchise, and with tension abound thanks to the overhanging dread the story created for itself, alongside a few nice action set pieces, the film gradually filled me with a lot of good vibes. However, even with those good vibrations and a relaxed tone being present, it did leave comedy clamouring for attention, as laughs were extremely sparse, making the story not feel as well rounded as it should have. In fact, it was remarkably soulless at times, as it just lumbered along with not much difference from the drama and tension, which would have been great to crack the tone somewhat and make it feel more than just a nice chill adventure. And it did dampen my mood, as this was a lost opportunity to really expand on things. And this story had weaved itself so professionally for pretty much its entire duration, with themes of loss, social exclusion, nature versus industrialization, and fantasy becoming reality all coming through strongly. The fact that this slice of life tale in the woods had more than meets the eye is great, but thanks to a lack of an injection of fun, this film missed out on the chance, story-wise, to match its predecessor, and I am not very happy with that. In fact, I am just plainly disappointed that it didn't end up jumping the final hurdle to make it work. And speaking of disappointment, the animation was surprisingly muted thanks to primarily it being spread out way too thin for its own good, as the location of the camp and its activities were not being used to its fullest advantage, as the characters stuck to their guns hobby-wise, restricting the potential of what this camp could have done for them and their development as a whole, which is what an experience like this should have done. You shouldn't be able to request hobbies and somehow be prepared for all of it. It doesn't honestly make any sense. And while there was the usual new character designs, the occasional facial expression, and good selection of new outfits on show, which of course I do like, there was just enough extra pizzazz to not let the location's monotony dumb it down. We had visual effects such as the grainy film effect over the exposition dump of the story of the camp and Guy Everfree, we had the mind-reading flashes, which were lovely as well, the cave, the pre-intro Midnight Sparkle scene, which still freaked the shit out of me, the transformation sequence, and of course, along with that, the entire final act as a whole. Good lord, because it really helped amp up this film's visual clout, although it did have a lack of transitions which compounded its limited appeal as a whole. The music, though, on the contrary, was arguably at its strongest over the course of the entire filmography, with every single song in the film being fantastic on the ears, at least in my opinion. We got folk, soft rock and dance pop genres on show, alongside a dark villain song and a mournful ballad, capped off with an anthemic credits song to finish it off in quite stunning style indeed. Yet it was let down at the last hurdle thanks to a surprisingly dull showing from the background music. And while this can be excused as a desire to let the sound of nature be this film's calling card, it made a lot of scenes feel devoid of charm and real intensity, leaving you wait patiently for it to just come alive. And sure, there was enough going on in the story and character development to actually take you away from that thought, but when it actually crossed your mind, you wouldn't be able to keep it out of your head. As you can see, this film managed to do what it could rather well, but it left itself really hesitant to try to overwhelm the senses or try to overwhelm the narrative, inevitably causing it to look patchy, but accomplished in equal measure. And I've got to say though, I am still incredibly disappointed at the fact that I couldn't get many laughs out of this film. Seriously, at least even this series at its worst can still get a few laughs out of me, which means to be left with not much to handle is a very, very cumbersome and incredibly sobering thought, because it seriously couldn't shift that serious tone even if it tried. Even a shot of sunset shimmer sleep karateing had very little chance of trying to resurrect this film's tone-deaf approach to itself. Then again, I am more disappointed at this franchise's history with poor character writing, and the voice acting, while decent, has never been utterly incredible. Then again, folks, I have some good news to bear on to you, that this film actually may have done something good on that front. No matter how many times I've slagged off this category in the past, in the here and now, I can say it stands proud with a resolute and mostly fantastic rise from the smouldering ashes of its predecessors. Now, while the Shadow Bolts were left meandering with little purpose in friendship games, on the contrary, we saw two brand new characters in Gloriosa Daisy and Timber Spruce getting added to the canon, and both were quite well fleshed out. They were siblings at war, showcasing opposing personality contrasts. One was cocky, smart and caring, while the other was unashamedly kind and driven, but hiding a lot of pain within. They were so well developed for characters made just for this film that they showcased all the noticeable qualities you would think to come from two people who run a camp as a business, while injecting their own fun and quirk into it all. It was quite fantastic, even though Gloriosa got corrupted by her problems and almost destroyed everything. It highlighted the ability to showcase that her brother wasn't just being a dick, which many people thought of through this entire thing. You thought, oh god, he's obviously going to be a huge womanizer. No. This guy has more to him than he lets on. And it was really nice to see. And not just that, at the end of this film, both characters subtly alluded to the fact their parents were dead. Even more development coming out of literally nothing. They drove an essential and underlying conflict forward to give this film some body, all while making you occasionally laugh and become enveloped in what they were telling, to believe that either of them could be sabotaging the other, leading to the twist of one's involvement over the other. And it was really nice to see that the simple and less is more mentalities came through. They definitely learnt from the Shadow Bolts to ensure that this film had enough to drive it forward. And through these two, the rest of the cast wanted a piece of this well-written pie and jumped on the bandwagon to get their best showcasings for quite some time. In particular, the main five, as they got to be a part of the film's story and feel relevant for the first time in what seemed like ages, while still fitting into their cliches to make them still feel a little tired, but this time it wasn't as noticeable. Sci-Twi followed on from friendship games as her anxiety and fears grew exponentially, which contrasted fantastically with her adorable love-struck nature around Timber, as this meet-cute trope established a nice romantic subplot that bolstered the film nicely, while also giving us a break from the tension the rest of the story gave to us. Now, Sunset Shimmer not only highlighted her to be the apex of her growth in this film, proving her worth as a linchpin for the franchise, she also helped Flash Century let Pony Twilight go, as these two re-established their own friendship in a lovely way. On top of all that, the minor and supporting characters even felt their time, as Bulk Bicep showcased himself beautifully with the own lone bits of comedy that we got with his varied personality. Celestia showcased her playful and enthusiastic side, with Luna relaying her preference to moons and night with the sundial gag. Again, a very small bit of comedy, but absolutely fantastic as well for her character depth, which has not been outlined in this series at all up until this point. And even Filthy Rich, in his role as the true antagonist for story's sake, made sense, because when it was put into context, it rounded out the alignment tree, and even in a very small role in the background, delivered on increasing the drama that this film had. And it meant that every single character that was involved in this feature delivered something to give it some meat and body, and it ensured that all the interactions in this new environment actually meant something. And while it may have meandered through its relaxed pace, at least we got some depth and continued substance out of it. Sadly, we have to come to a negative off of this positive train, as the voice acting outside of Gloriosa Daisy's fantastic performance was stunted and meagre, lacking in power to really give this category some emblematic polish. Although, in massive contrast to that, the message of opening up about your problems before they spiral out of control was kept simple, and unlike the others in the filmography, served two purposes. Not only did it become a major overriding plot point for Sci-Twi, but also a lesson to be learnt by Gloriosa in the aftermath of her decision to become the legend that she despised. It was a driven message that from the first minute was essential in tying the story and writing together for character and plot development, while being unveiled in the best way possible to ensure its impact was powerful, rounding out what supportive friends are with no worries at all to be shown. So even with some minor dents all along the way, there really isn't too much to pick apart from a film that does what it provides very well. So as you can tell, this film has actually done pretty well for itself in being able to strike slice of life and drama pretty well together. I mean, sure, not all the elements were up to scratch and they weren't universally perfect, but even I have to admit when a film has outdone me and proven to be quite exciting, even if it did have some problems. That being said though, if it was able to iron out those kinks and make something honestly quite spectacular, how would this film have fared if it did manage to fire on all cylinders? And inevitably, it makes me wonder, what the blue hell am I going to give this thing? On my initial viewing, I felt this film fulfilled everything that I wanted from this franchise. I had a lot of fun. The story had twists and turns while retaining focus on its tone and pace, all while giving me developed characters and music, the quality of which has yet to be surpassed. It was difficult for me to find fault with it, which is why I'm extremely thankful that I took the time to analyse it, because it took some shine off its surface, making me understand that this was not the rosy and extremely good success that it played itself out to be. Those bruises and bumps and the disappointing voice acting, a lack of comedic tone, a dire spread of substantial animation elements, and an absence of background music really hampered it, stopping it from going further up the ladder than it already had done, letting it down considerably as not everything had been thought through to their best abilities, despite a good display from almost every category that I rate. And as a result, this film made up for the first two films' errors and learnt enough from the third to be confident in doing some new things, and for the most part they worked well to ensure this film stood out from its peers to be the best that this franchise has to offer, at least in my opinion. And while I am frustrated that these little niggles it had took away from my experience on both sides in a casual and analytical sense, there is no question that this film is the beacon of quality that the rest of the Equestria Girls franchise's future installments has to try and match. And I am telling you now, it will be a very difficult task for them to achieve it. Overall, Legend of Everfree scored a total of 20 out of 25, which is a B+. In closing, I can tell that some of you are going to be quite aggrieved by this choice, thinking to yourself, this guy must be an idiot because there's no way The Legend of Everfree could go above the rest of this series' filmography. Well, the thing is, I'm a difficult man to please, and when something is done to my expectations in a good way, I can give it as much resolute praise as I want to. Then again, when I looked at it casually and was overwhelmed by positivity, I knew going into this review I would find some problems, and boy did I. It wasn't perfect, and I've acknowledged that. But even under my analytical microscope and my critical opinion, it still came out pretty good regardless. And honestly, those issues it has are there, and I cannot shy away from it. But honestly, I didn't expect it to do this well. I thought that those problems would overwhelm it and destabilise it structurally to where it falls away from the lofty perch that my naive mind highlighted upon seeing it for the first time. And I'm happy it managed to prove me wrong. So yeah, we end this Equestria Girls feature film canon at this time of recording and subsequent release in pretty good fashion, at least to my opinion. Then again, it also left us one final parting gift, and that was a cliffhanger to set up any future installments. With only the TV specials left to review and analyse, I do have to question whether they can capture the qualities that made this film so enjoyable for me to begin with. And with a shorter runtime, I doubt that they can, but they have a good chance to prove me wrong, much like the prior 4 films did across this review series. Now, if they don't manage to, and the aura of this film wears off, I have a lot of confidence that I can regain it just by watching the Legend of Everfree blooper reel, because that never gets old, and it makes me realise that this is where most of the comedy from this film ended up going. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people watching, this has been the Legend of Everfree film review as part of Equestria Girls Month for the CC Network. I will see you all next time. Here's a thought, wouldn't Rarity's ability to conjure diamonds at will destroy the industry once word got around? I mean, diamonds are not rare and they are technically intrinsically worthless despite the fact they have a high demand. So if a person could conjure diamonds up doing quite literally nothing, the industry would just crumble, wouldn't it? And that means Rarity, De Beers, would like a word with you, because I believe there is an Equestria Girls equivalent, and knowing that they have a monopoly on diamond mines across the world in reality, I wonder what would happen if they came across you realising they lost all their money. Would murder be an option? Would human slavery be an option so they could keep that monopoly open? I honestly don't know, but it's a great thing to realise when you put things into context.